Welcome to Flat Earth Debate, Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Speaking of Patreon, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon, so a massive shout out of thanks and appreciation to Will Brax, Melby Styles, Troy Shuker, Bose Nail, Joseph Pizarro, Samson, Maris, Mobile Max 777, Neo the One, Lost Cat FE, Rob W, Open Minded, Reese Pound, Del West Watson, Mike, Muted, Dick Earth Skeptic, NA Literalist, Maria Neelands, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, Rob H, The Real Gabster, Windrider, Liam Nedrick Jr., Abraham Mohammed, Naibai, Adrian Quintana, Skeptic 936, Life is Short, Fireball X, Texas Mike, Edwin Johnson, Kirsten Smith, and David Wayne Foster. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Also below this video there is a link to get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. With that, I'll hand over to whoever is in G+ and Discord so you can enjoy their conversation while I set up for today's live show.
Can you imagine if the helium falls on you? I mean, the damage. Whew.
The sky is falling, George. You gotta wear a helmet and a mask if you can.
I really appreciate you playing along, by the way, Synclenser, as much as it might seem like you're getting the sharp end of my tongue. Don't actually probably appreciate how grateful I am, because obviously to thrash out the argument I need someone to put the opposing side across, and that's you. So yeah, I'm grateful. In case you don't realise, I just wanted to make that clear.
No, listen, Nathan, I appreciate the whole platform and the whole debate and discussion itself, so the fact that we can kick it around and get into all these different kind of discussions it's a lot of fun, so the pleasure is mine. Hopefully everyone else enjoys it too, you know, because I definitely do.
I love it, enjoying when your claims get smashed.
That's not really the point I was making, Neil, but there we go.
Neil, you're back for more, eh?
Before you got here, Neil,
chops.
Before you got here, Neil, they were joking about helium smacking them in the head. That's why I piped up. So I don't think it's quite like how you think it might be.
No, I just popped in. What about helium smacking them in the head?
I don't know. That's where I joined in the conversation.
Now, if you remove the structural support of the helium, I mean, it's gonna hit you big time. It's gonna go.
Oh, here
splash.
we go. Structural support.
Here we go.
Everybody gird themselves.
Gird themselves. Boom, boom.
Nothing gets by 10th.
Every now and then a little mice does. Good morning.
Well, I've been thinking about this argument for quite a while.
Oh, nice one there. I trust you know what you're talking about. No? You didn't get that one?
I trust, yeah, I got it, of course. I was just trying to think of a response, and I'm not dad enough to do it.
It's too early.
I was going to go on to guttering, but I thought it's not structural enough.
I'm still starting the engine here, man.
Yeah, my cup of tea is here. It's 6:31 a.m.
9:31 for me, and I'm on a job site. So I will be on mute most of the time. Unless you want to hear the ruckus.
No, we're past the ruckus.
Been shopping today, which is normally not a noteworthy exercise, other than everything here is locked down. Now, I don't really get out much into the wide world. There's only a few occasions, things like my wife's birthday, which is tomorrow, and I needed a few odds and sods to go with the present I got her. It was 10,000 times more difficult than I ever expected to just go and buy a few odds and sods. It's just nuts. The world we live in is a very crazy place at the moment. Has been for a
It
while. I'm
is.
sure that's no big news to anybody, but it just shocks me every time I go out.
No, I think it's a pertinent statement you said there, because it was crazy before, but we kind of like still could move around in it. Now it's so crazy you can't even move around in it.
Yeah, it's just limited things that you can get done. But there we go. I mean, I'm sure I'm preaching to the converted most of the time on this particular platform, but man, what a crazy world we live in. I knew that anyway, and I dealt with this a long time ago. It's just in the entire period since COVID lockdown started, I dealt with it pretty much before the first lockdown. I knew what was coming. I shed my tears and then dealt with it as the new normal, and preached that a couple of times on shows, and then just didn't talk about it again, just accepted it. But now this is the first time since it started that I've sort of really reflected on it when I was out, like I say, just doing a bit of shopping in town without giving it much consideration. And don't get me wrong, I've got the mask in my pocket, so I just see it as a grief alleviator. You know, does this person look like they're going to give me grief? Yeah, I'll put the mask on then. You know, that's all it is.
Yeah. Well, they've done that here in Tennessee. They've really, I don't know about the laws necessarily, but a lot of people just, like you said, will have it around them, but they all kind of, it's like an unspoken thing that they're just not going to wear it. I don't know if that's a change of some sort, but I think people are kind of over it. But I don't know how
Well,
it is in other places in the world.
Well, that's it.
It depends where.
Sorry, go on, Tenth.
Yeah, it depends where you're at. Like I'm in California, so it's totally left wing and Looney Tune here. So certain stores, they got people that they pay to stand right in front to say, can't come in without it, can't come in without it. So, you put it on your chin and they don't say nothing. You take it off while you're shopping, say nothing. And the minute you go to pay for it, oh, you got to put it on to pay for it. You got to put it on, pay for it. So other places just won't let you in. Some places won't let you go out without putting it on. And I never cover my whole face anyway, just my chin. And one lady said, well, you got to cover your mouth and nose. And I said, well, I'll cover my mouth, but I got to breathe. She didn't say anything.
Anyway.
Yeah, anyway, back to the big lie of the nature of our reality about the Earth.
I mean, it all ties back. I mean, we could very easily segue, but I just don't think it's fresh or new, or it hasn't been done 1,000 times before on other platforms in terms of the type of control structures we live in. And in
Well,
most part,
that's
they're
not
obvious,
your show
right?
anyway.
For the most part, they're obvious. The control structures are the control structures. The laws, the rules, the regs, the acts here. I don't know what you call them there, bills or something. But, it's all the same systems of control, and it's pretty much right in front of your eyes. So, linking that back to a control structure that's subliminal, which is what we deal with. We're dealing with a subliminal control structure when we talk about the Earth and the nature of it. It's not covert or overt. It's subliminal.
No, your show is about the Earth. I mean, the control structures are probably on every single topic of every single YouTube, anything, just anything here has some kind of control structure. But like you said, we're dialing it in on the nature of the Earth and why they're lying about it, and then we're just taking it to them, and they're falling apart. I mean, look what's happened to the ballers. They're admitting things they've never admitted before.
Right. The whole construct, the whole paradigm is sold to you subliminally. I'm only putting this together literally in this moment because of thinking about the route that I took into Flat Earth. Where did I find myself? What was I researching at the time? Well, I was researching subliminal messages and psychopathy. And the way a globe is put into your mind as a thing that's real is in a subliminal manner. I've described it before with things like Superman. in terms of the levels that you're suspending disbelief when you watch Superman fly around a globe. Well, your brain instinctually knows that Superman's not real, but you give it a pass because that's the plot of the film. But you don't instinctually know, or you don't at any conscious level realise that when you see him flying around a globe Earth, that is actually a subliminal message. It's not consciously being taken in at any distance. It's just an image, and your brain tells you that is the image of the world that you live on, without you even thinking about it.
Exactly.
Well,
It's
let's
very
take.
subtle. It's too subtle.
This is why when I've
Well,
described it with someone else, I think it was Chocolate, I can't remember who it was, somebody saying, I can still get into the movies. I always use Amir, Insanity is Sanity YouTube channel, as my example when he talks about his video game. You know, he can just get into the Star Wars game. This is 3 or 4 years ago, probably longer now, maybe 5 years ago. I had this conversation with him, fairly new to the subject for both of us. And he was like, yeah, well, I can just get into Star Wars game and suspend disbelief enough to play it, and it's perfectly acceptable for me to cope with mentally, and I enjoy it. I'm like, great, good for you. I can't suspend disbelief. The moment a film breaks into the aliens landing from space, it just shatters the suspension of disbelief for me to the point where I can't enjoy the movie anymore. And it happens more often than you'd imagine.
Yeah.
I just was able to watch The Mandalorian, but I can't no more. It's ruined it for me.
It's
Well,
like
that's- go on.
it's like, I don't know. Once you're into flat Earth, when you look back in hindsight, or even going forward, it's like it's just kind of like preposterous. It's like you're gonna have to react to it in some way, and it's like absurd. I don't know. It's one of those things, if you're watching a movie with someone and it's like space oriented, you're like, well, I don't know about that one. It's just like a knee-jerk reaction.
Well, I remember, Nathan, you saying how you used to go to the back of the plane on your flights when you were in sales and traveling a lot, and you would just can't wait to see the curve of the Earth, and you could never see it, no matter how high you got. Then, of course, that's attacking your senses. You're saying, wait a minute, I should see it from up here. They say boats and buildings are blocked from down there, but from up here, I should see it falling away on all sides, because I'm on part of this globe, this sphere, and everything should be falling away from me, but it's not. They run into gas pressure without a container. Well, we all know, because we all have cars with tires with air. I mean, you need a container for gas pressure. Then you got the rotation of the Earth and the lack thereof, because there is no Earth-based Coriolis. And then you got the dynamics of water always finding its level. All these things we see through life, and then when you say it's subliminal, it's because of this big magic trick they got with constant images and movies and everything else. So when you're a flat earther and you wake up to the lie, no matter what level you were before accepting or not accepting, because I always doubted it and I always fought it, but then it was like there was no flat earth debate shows. There was no one on TV was showing a flat earth to as an opposing view, but I knew the earth wasn't spinning. We all knew the earth wasn't spinning. I mean, I think we all knew that.
First one you mentioned is also a trick in and of itself, though. When you talk about me going up to altitude and going, I can't see Earth curve up, but knowing the rhetoric that I should have to go a lot higher to see it, is akin to the Neil deGrasse Tyson's argument in the last 18 months, where he says, you know, that stuff is flat, doesn't matter how high you go, you can't see the curve of the Earth from the ISS. That in itself is a magic trick, because when the flat earthers go, you see, that stuff is flat, he's saying it's flat. No, what he's doing is he's saying, be sure to reify the horizon into a physical sphere edge. That sphere edge wouldn't look bent at this altitude, you wouldn't see the curve of the Earth, you'd have to get higher to see the horizon as a physical sphere edge bending. So both sides end up arguing about whether you can. If you're a complete noob, you'd think you'd see the horizon bending through the airplane window. Well, it doesn't. If it does, it's an optical illusion, or it's the periphery of your vision, or the bent lens of the plane window, but it doesn't make any difference. The horizon's not physical. But if you can get people to argue on one side that, well, it doesn't bend at altitude, look, the horizon stays at eye level as you rise in altitude. Well, while that might be true, from a perspective point of view, you can argue that. But it implies that the fact that it stays flat and level as you rise means it's not bending. It's like, well, no, you're arguing about something not bending when it's not physical. the horizon's not Earth curve. It's not a physical location. It's not blocking boats and buildings. It's been debunked by the Black Swan. And the trick is to get both sides to argue within the framework that the horizon's a physical Earth curve edge, and then just argue about whether or not it'll bend at whatever altitude you're going to argue about it at.
No,
I've been
exactly.
saying that's his best magic trick. I've said that for a while now. That's his best magic trick. When he slaps that beach ball and says that stuff is flat.
Yeah,
Yeah, well,
he says you can't see the curve of the Earth from a quarter of an inch off this beach ball. Well, he's not implicitly stating, but basically you've got the sphere Earth as the beach ball, so you're reifying the Earth into that thing he's holding in his hand, and then mentally you picture yourself a quarter of an inch above it, looking at the edge where it falls away, as per their tangent point geometric physical Earth curve hijacking of perspective mathematics. Well, when he's describing that, he is describing the physical geometric sphere edge obstruction that would be your view if you were an ant or whatever insect he described on the top of the beach ball. So he is definitely describing a physical limitation, which is described as the horizon being an Earth curve edge in that analogy. He's just saying that you can't see the edge bending from a quarter of an inch above the beach ball. Well, while that might actually be true, it still requires you to reify the horizon into a physical Earth curve edge that's going to be physically blocking boats and buildings for their mathematics to assert it when they hijack perspective. So it is a really clever magic trick. And when it first came out, I was like getting frustrated with flat earthers, like saying, look, Neil deGrasse Tyson saying it's flat. It's like, no, you're not pointing out to your audience that you're telling them to assume that the horizon's flat at a given altitude and wouldn't show any curve. Well, how is that useful when the horizon's not Earth curve? It's not a physical location. It moves with the weather, changes with altitude because it's based on perspective. But that's got nothing to do with their attribution of its physicality and your parroting of the fact that the non-physical horizon, which isn't being pointed out by flat earthers, remains flat as you get up really high. Well, so what? Unless you're pointing out it's non-physical, their argument still stands, and you can argue all day about how much it will or won't bend at altitude. Because you can say, well, math says it bends right from the ground level. You can see Earth curve at 1.2 miles. So you should see it more at altitude. Well, what? See what? A physical horizon bending. The horizon's not physical. That's all it needs pointing out going forward.
Well, Nathan, now we have something else that's wonderful when he did that. He goes against Al-Biruni and Al-Biruni's dip measurement and the tangent line. And so his beach ball at over 120,000 feet can't see it, but how did Al-Biruni see it?
Because if you put that to Tyson, I bet he'd have an answer for you, which would be to say that when I'm describing not seeing the curve of the Earth from left to right in the periphery of your view, that isn't possible until you get beyond ISS heights in a reified sphere Earth world when I'm getting up to a sky vacuum to do this. However, Al-Biruni's measuring a dip angle, isn't he? He's measuring what's visible and non-visible to the point where the horizon's dropped. Well, that's working on a different axis to what I'm describing altitude. That would be Neil deGrasse Tyson's get out for that answer. That's how they do it when they juxtapose what you'll see in terms of the horizon curving when described by Neil deGrasse Tyson in that example is left to right. Will the horizon bend in your field of view? No, you can't see that from that altitude. And that's what I knew when I was in the aeroplane. Wish I could go higher, wish I could see the curve. You've got to get very high, though, to see that transition from a flat plane, which is what we actually observe, and I knew it, and I was looking at it, to what we see in the blue marble picture. Well, between the altitude you're in a commercial airliner and that blue marble, there's a transition. Obviously, it's going to start getting more and more curved. That's what I wanted to see, and that's what Tyson's describing. But Al-Biruni's getting a dip angle measurement. Something very different now, isn't it?
Not really, because if you can spot it at the low altitude of a mountaintop, the higher you go, your perspective and field of view gets bigger, so you ought to see it more. So that goes against experience and reason and logic.
Yeah, but and
reality.
Yeah.
What you
But
should
his magic
see, I've
trick
seen
is
the,
he got you talking about the horizon.
hold on. I've seen the maths for this. It's insignificantly tiny. If you go to the advanced calculator, you can see what they're claiming should be the left to right curvature from ground up, and it's tiny. It's so tiny. That's what Neil deGrasse Tyson is talking about. If you pinned him down, that's what he'd be talking about. And it doesn't contradict when you look at their maths. But then you're into begging the question now, aren't you? But when you look at those maths, it still goes along with what
That's what I
Al-Biruni
just said.
God, guys, can I just explain this? It still falls in line with what Al-Biruni did, but for the assumption of a physical horizon to measure the dip to. That's the bit where it falls on its ass, not the left to right assertions from Neil deGrasse Tyson versus the dip angle measurement of Al-Biruni. Those two things can coexist without contradicting each other, with Neil deGrasse Tyson's statement being true. And me knowing that, that's what I knew when I went up in the airliner, what Neil deGrasse Tyson's detailing. But the trick, I already knew when he came out with it, was to take that assumption of whether it'll bend or not and describe your horizon as physical and ask yourself whether it'll bend at a given altitude. Well, no, you won't notice it until beyond the ISS it's fisheye. Well, he's right. Does that mean you can't get a dip angle measurement when you assume there's a horizon that's physical, that's below a 90-degree zenith, when you assume you're on a built ball, which is what Al-Biruni did? But the physical assumption is what you need to focus on, because that's what's required in both instances. In both instances, Tyson and Al-Biruni are assuming a physical horizon. And we haven't got one. That's it. Debunks both. Forget whether or not he says it's flat from any altitude, because eventually he's going to say, well, of course it curves eventually. Look at the blue marble. Right? So how's he going to get around that if you're already on board with him assuming that this horizon's physical? If you haven't pointed it out, you haven't debunked their argument.
I agree. You're just saying it a different way than I am, but it's the same endpoint, which is the lack of a physical horizon.
Exactly.
No, it's over for them. They beg the question. They want to live on a sphere, so they know it's got to be 360 degrees. Now, how big is it? So now they got to figure out a radius so they could tell you how big it is. And so they did all that the way they did it. And so it's 3959 radius. Great. At 3959, an observer at 1 foot height, the physical geometric horizon could be no further than 1.22 miles. Goodbye, globe. You never thought this day would come, smack you in the head like helium.
Yeah, like helium doesn't. Make sure to drop that in. You don't want to
No, that
actually
was a
start
joke.
convincing.
That was a joke for the earlier.
Yeah, otherwise we'll end up with a scenario like Simon Dan, where he wants to debunk our claim that gas go down, go boom, boom. It's like, no, that's not our claim. Hello?
No, I was just making a joke from the pre-show earlier.
Yeah, I know. You're saying when helium smacks you in the head, but just let's make it clear gas expands in all directions. Our argument isn't the piss take out of their argument. So in other words, at the moment, people are saying, oh, Nathan says gas go down, go boom, boom. No, Thunderfoot. Hello? That's stupid and asserted by your side, Globe Believers. So yeah, feel free to debunk my assertion that gas go down, go boom, boom. Feel free to tell me that it expands in all directions. How stupid are you? So I can tell you how you have effectively debunked gravity rather than me doing it.
Nathan says gas go down, go boom boom is the funniest thing I've ever heard.
It's people so stupid that they think I'm actually asserting that as my argument, but that's why I'm saying to you, when we say helium hitting you in the head, obviously that's fairly, I have to be cognizant of the fact that some people are very stupid.
Oh yeah,
They've said it so much that they think that's your claim, when it's really just you reacting to things that other globers have said, or globers.
Yeah, it's a Simon Dan situation, Well, Earth doesn't turn under planes. Welcome to non-rotating flat Earth then, Dan. Telling me my reference frames are ruined when it's part of your claim is because I've obviously pitched that so many times that him as an on-stander or bystander or whatever he's doing in the sidelines goes, Earth doesn't turn under planes. I'm going to debunk that. She's like, you stupid idiot. You're supposed to be defending that it does. And when it was pointed out to him from the sidelines, again, when he was in my chat and Rumpus's on the show, he's like, yeah, of course I believe in drift. Rumpus? It's like, what, the drift you're debunking? You stupid idiot. But there's endless examples now, isn't there?
Can I ask you a question by chance?
Say again?
I'm not trying to call anybody out. That's not my situation. But when I was listening to the video the other day, and I didn't have much time because I'm traveling, was Bob saying that gases lose all energy and that's why we have a downward bias? Is that what he's saying? Or did I get that incorrect?
No, you got it correct. There is a word for it as well. I looked it up the other day. Hold on a second. The word for it is it's bollocks.
I'm sorry, but that was good. And I'm not trying to call Bob out, but when I heard that, I'm like, then show me, because that's crazy to me. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure and clarify that.
No, what he was trying to do, and this was on Brandon's show. He came on there on the panel, and it was trying
did
to
he?
convince
Okay.
people. Yeah, he was trying to convince people that in a vacuum, gas would go down and fill the bottom of the vacuum. And it was a hard sell for him to really convince the flat earthers on the panel, and it was a little bit of a controversy. So, I think that's where
Yeah.
the clip may have been taken from.
Well, of
But,
course,
It's
it's going to
very
be a hard
it's
thing to
very
sell to
similar
flat Earth
to
people.
exactly. A lot of connotations in that claim that he made.
it turns out to be kind of a statement, kind of like, it turns out that there's a magic speed.
So, but
The natural progression from that Brandon's chat was that Where's Wally, who's an Australian dude, is obviously spliced together a lot of the one-liners that he says, and then he's got people like Simon Dan or Wolfie or whoever, basically just to say thanks, Bob, after everything he says that supports gravity. And it's weird because
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
when I did the
it's
egg test,
cringy. It's a
it was never
cringy meme.
Pardon?
hold on, Anthony. The people,
It's too much
what you're
double
hearing
speak.
is groans and sighs, and I think they just want them to be verbalized. So let's get your groans and sighs out, Discord server. Go ahead.
Hold on. I just want to say that the thanks Bob whole thing is just, it's really cringy when you hear a Glober say thanks Bob. It's just like, come on.
Well, that's my issue. It sounds like he's like, I'm literally talking to a Glober then. If Bob's saying that, it's basically what they're saying, and many different ways. You're supporting gravity. And I have an issue with that, especially as, a globe denier. It's not making us look very, good when somebody says something like that, and you're going to have to validate that. It's all about validation. Then where's Bob's validation that happens?
Well, there isn't any. He just assumes that it's there. But this is the weird thing, though. When I did
Right.
the egg test originally, I never intended it to be challenged by anyone on our side, particularly. Yeah, we might have a conversation about it, but let's be really clear. We don't need gravity. Yeah, it might be there. It also doesn't matter if it's not. So it doesn't matter to us whether it's there or not. But on their model, it absolutely matters, because a lot of Earthers do think that if gravity was switched off, you'll magically float off into space. They literally think that. That's how important it is.
Mhm.
That's how much magnitude that argument's got for a blurther. Now, we realize that in scale, it's tiny. The force is negligible, even if it is there, but it's not going to stop you from flying. It's not going to cause you to fly off into space. But when I did that test, it was never intended that anybody on our side would ever pick up on it, because it doesn't matter on our side. And then, but of all the people that could have been picked up on, it was Bob. And I'm like, I don't get that. Why would you argue it so vehemently? So I've put myself into Bob's shoes to try and think what would be the reason that I would argue it so strongly. And the only thing that I can think of is that he wants to prove the ether, and he will prove the ether, basically change gravity into ether, so that he can get rid of that 15 degrees thing. It's the only thing that I can think of that he's arguing it for, because it doesn't really matter to us.
Well, hold on. Just
That's what
because
I've
we've
been
been talking
saying for
about
a
this
while.
for a couple of days. The only thing I was going to say is that when you're a flat earther, we all reject gravity as they describe it. Mass attracting mass is garbage. The bending and warping of space-time is garbage. Now, when you're a flat earther, the world is kind of up for you to rediscover. We don't have to accept gravity, but we can think about a whole different plethora of ideas to pick and choose from. I don't think we need to replace gravity, because gravity was never a thing to begin with. But we can describe a lot of different things and
What are you
have the
talking about?
presumption and knowledge that the Earth is flat.
Right. Agreed. As I say, I've said it many times. I commend anybody looking into this stuff. It's really fascinating when people are describing things I had no idea about. Incoherent dielectric acceleration, very interesting stuff. The only problem comes when you start asserting that things go down. You're like, what about the stuff that goes up? So in your recent example,
Right.
Exactly.
okay, right, well, if we turn it off, things will fly off. So is it turned off for steam, or does that just go up? No downward bias, basically. There's no phenomena that we need to worry about. It just needs to be a phenomena for the world to be a sphere shape and have a sky vacuum above it. And what do you know? You've got someone like Bob who's describing something that could, in my view, only be beneficial to an argument that has space in it. Well, the gas goes down to the ground. Oh, right. So that's handy if you need a vacuum above it. Do we need a vacuum above us as a sky? As flat earthers? No, we don't. So I don't need the sky to be a vacuum. In fact, it stands in violation of natural law. So I'm going to definitely vehemently defend that that's complete horseshit, especially when you've got to assert that gas go down, go boom, boom to assert it. So, and not only that, when it's being asserted by a flat earther, it's like, to what ends? How does this benefit you? You want the sky to be a vacuum, do you? Why?
I want to take a little correction to what Cleanser said about gravity. We're here to expose it as a lie. Doesn't matter if it doesn't exist or if 90% of the world thinks it does. We're here to expose it as a lie.
Well, just as a reaction, real quick, they need gravity to work for everything in their model. The heliocentric model needs gravity. It's the staple of their whole model. Flat earthers don't need gravity at all, and we can explain the world in completely different philosophical ways. That's the benefit of flat earth. Whereas they need it, we really don't need it.
Well, that's why it's a lie. And we need to expose it so people can see. Because, see, flat earth has such a connotation because of the combined efforts of mass media and the powers to be, whoever wants us to keep going down this heliocentric path, that everyone just accepts it. It's in sports. Oh, the ball fell down because of gravity. I mean, it's in songs. It's in everywhere. So once we expose that lie, people say, wait a minute, the underfooting, just one of the main foundations just went out.
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live. There's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also below this video there is a link to get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show. One last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by 10th Man, Arwin, Brian, Neil, Sleeping Warrior, and a whole bunch of people on Discord, so welcome one and all.
Hey.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good afternoon, all.
Hey.
Hello, Jin. Good to see you.
Morning, good afternoon.
Hello. Nice to have you. Quick announcement. So there won't be a live show tomorrow. It's my wife's birthday. So just so you know, in case anybody questions you after the fact, why isn't there a live show? That's why there's not a live show. So there won't be a live show tomorrow. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere-edge horizon, formerly known as Earth curvature?
No, Galileo was wrong. Thanks, P900.
You guys seen the video on YouTube adverts for like a handheld monoscope? Anybody seen that advert on YouTube?
Yeah, the one that clips onto the back of your camera, your mobile phone camera.
You've got it, and it produces the world's most amazing pictures. I just found it interesting. Somebody pulled apart the advert and found that one of the pieces of Zoom footage was from a P900. That was class. Look, it zooms amazingly, and you're like, no, the P900 zooms amazingly. Anyway, any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
No. No, you can calculate it as to what it was if you just assume it.
No, we're not spinning in Nottingham.
Hey up, Meekin.
Hi, guys.
If you had axial rotation, everyone would notice it because there would be an effect by it. So if they say the Earth is spinning, what would the effect have to be, and what would we have to observe?
Coriolis effect, 15 degrees an hour deviation as we rotated underneath things not attached, causing things like aeroplanes to seem like they're taking a curved path when they're actually travelling straight. So likewise, you can induce this effect from a roundabout. Just look at an aeroplane when you're on a kid's roundabout. Looks like it's turning around in the air. It's not. It's just a not actual deflection caused by you turning underneath. Earth is claimed to have that effect to the tune of 15 degrees an hour. So we would see things deflect at 15 degrees an hour if we were turning beneath them, as is claimed. It's called Coriolis deflection.
Well, their only answer is the sun moving at 15 degrees an hour, and they say it's because the Earth is rotating. But if the Earth is rotating and it causes the sun to appear to move 15 degrees an hour, but it's not the sun moving because it's so far away in their model, so it's really the Earth moving, then a helicopter, a drone, a hot air balloon, anything above the reference plane into another reference plane would have that deviation, would it not?
Yeah, they claim things drift at 15
Can I add
degrees an hour.
one thing to that real quick?
Go ahead.
It's not only that they say that there's an axial tilt. If you're going to say Coriolis, a lot of the global model, heliocentric model, says there's a wobble too. The wobble they say there's a tilt and a wobble. The wobble is, from what I understand, a way of mediating all of the differential equations and the ways that they could account for incorrect errors and deficiencies. There's a wobble, they claim, too.
But
Is the wobble not for precession?
Yeah, it is, yeah. You're on a different subject.
Well, you never hear them account for the wobble. They'll say there's an axial tilt, it's spinning, Coriolis, but where do snipers account for the wobble? You never hear them talk about that.
It's a fair point, but yeah, their claim is Coriolis, Earth turning beneath snipers' bullets for them to have to lead the target, because when the bullet leaves the ground, travels through the air, Earth turns beneath it. Well, that's 15 degrees an hour deviation as Earth turns beneath a sniper's bullet. Likewise, it's claimed by Neil deGrasse Tyson that Earth turns beneath a football for it to score the winning goal. Well, that claim is Earth turning beneath stuff not attached. It would manifest in aeroplanes like you'd see on a roundabout. Same thing would occur on Earth if it was turning. The problem is that if it was happening because we're observing things drift from the ground, then you'd have shortened flight times when travelling west, because Earth would be turning beneath them. We don't have the Coriolis deviation that they claim we have, because the effect isn't observed.
Well, that's my point. They only could use the luminaries, but flat Earth is saying we're stationary and the luminaries are moving. So it's either the luminaries are moving, and that's the 15 degrees, or the Earth is moving. And in their model, it's the Earth moving. Well, in their model, they got a problem, because if the Earth is moving and the luminaries appear to drift at 15 degrees an hour caused by the Earth rotation, then anything in the inertial reference frame would also do the same, and it doesn't. So the whole argument dies right there.
Right. I've given a couple of references in the past to a video that Carl Jobst made. And Carl Jobst, for any gamers out there, is a guy who covers speedrunning. And his particular involvement in this description is because of Coriolis being a real bugger of a subject to debate. Always was, for me, just the nightmare subject that could take up 2 hours of your life and not get you anywhere. Not result in a win for either side, lots of confusion for both. And it just frustrated me. Now, the reason I bring up Carl Jobst is because yesterday he released a video about speedrunning a game called Doom, a very old shooter from the 90s. And in this game, second game, there's a particular part of the game where you have to run across ledges, and they're only a couple of pixels wide. And if you fall off, you've then got to go back to the beginning. It's like walking a tightrope, but with turns in it. And this particular guy called Looper, that's his like screen name that he runs these games under, had the same description as I use for Coriolis effect in terms of my frustrations with arguing it as he had with these ledges. So I drew a parallel between my frustrations with arguing Coriolis and Looper's frustrations with running these speedruns on these very tight, very narrow ledges in this game called Doom. Anyway, the point of the story is that after time and a lot of frustration and a lot of learning and a lot of what they call grinding, which is just doing it again and again and again and again and again till you get it right, eventually this guy Looper learns to love the ledges because he gets to learn how to do them, and then he can do them very efficiently. Now, I've got an opportunity to bring this up because yesterday Carl Jobs brought out a video, and it's slightly off subject, but I just think I'll mention it because I think it's brilliant. I even told my wife, and I'm not even a gamer, but I just thought this was interesting. This guy Looper was involved recently with a little speed run to try to get the world record on Doom 2, which is just like an extension of the original game. It's basically the same game. Anyway, and there's a bit in one of the levels, and I didn't twig what was being talked about when Carl Jobs talked about this, but they're trying to get up to this high platform, and what they do is they line themselves up in the corner and then blast themselves, causing themselves damage, but it throws them up high enough to get onto this ledge and end the level. So it's a cheat, basically. Not a cheat, but like a tactic to get to the end of the level quicker. And they show them doing it, and then Carl Jobs mentions that Looper, and I didn't know his name when I'd given the examples last time, he can just do it because he knows how to do the ledges. It happened to be the same level. So lots of people for like 20 years have been trying to figure out a way of getting past these stupid ledges. And then in the speedrun, I get to my final point, right? They showed the difference between the guy who's figured out a cheat to get up to the ledges, which is the standard way of running this level, and Looper actually playing the game as intended and running the ledges. And he was faster. In other words, for just learning how to do it and doing it correctly, he was quicker than the people that had figured out a cheat to do the same level. He was still quicker, right, doing it on the ledges. Anyway, it parallels me. It's giving me goosebumps telling this because I can now draw the same parallel with Coriolis effect again and say it's one of those arguments that's actually, unlike the ledges where the parallel falls apart, very simple to understand once you've got it. In other words, once you've got the knack of the argument, what is actually occurring to call it Coriolis? You on the ground turning, like on a school roundabout, looking at things not on the roundabout, moving because you're turning. So not actual deflection. Now, that's easy for me to summarise, but if you're in a debate with some fundy who's telling you about the plane and correcting for things, you're not going to catch that that's been taken away from you turning on a roundabout. In other words, it's like me saying, I'm looking at the plane seeming to turn 180 degrees because I've turned 180 degrees on a roundabout in school playground. And the plane hasn't actually turned around, it just seemed to. And then the person you're arguing with going, well, the plane can correct for that because it's got engines. And you go, what? Correct for what? It didn't actually turn around. But again, you've got to understand the argument to be able to snap into, what are you talking about? The plane hasn't got to correct for anything. It's me observing it seem to drift. Keeping their argument where it is on the ground. That's what Coriolis is. But then knowing how to take it away from the ground and saying, but in the plane, that if the ground's turning beneath for you to observe Coriolis from the ground, then the plane's going to have its flight time shortened. So as a flat earther, I can take this argument into the plane's position and detail what would happen as a consequence. But they can't. They have to stay on the ground because that's where Coriolis is observed from. As soon as they stop detailing it, detailing what the bullet will do, what the plane will do, what the football will do, well, that's not Coriolis. For Neil deGrasse Tyson, he was sneaky because he's describing it from the stands. He's giving it from his point of view. He's watching the ball curve. So he's giving his account of Coriolis as he turns beneath it on an earth that's spinning. Clever. He doesn't have to explicitly say it because he's describing it, while he's obviously assumed to be turning underneath the ball when he gives his description. But that's the only way to describe Coriolis for them, for the Globers. Not for us, Simon Dan, hope you're listening. But most of the people you're going to argue with are like Simon Dan. They don't even understand what Coriolis is, and will literally go to the extent of telling me that my reference frames are ruined when I don't have any. I'm debunking theirs with a good understanding. And likewise, Looper's destroying even the people who are trying to find a cheat for a level because he's just got a good understanding of the level. He's just done it to the point where he's good at it. So you can be that Looper guy. You can just be good at the tightrope that is Coriolis effect. And it is a tightrope. It does parallel with it because you can easily fall off if you don't know what the argument consists of, if you don't appreciate where they have to tie themselves to the ground that's claimed to be turning underneath stuff to see the effect, to then say, if we're turning underneath stuff to see the effect, it's going to shorten flight times, and not let them start detailing how, when they describe their Coriolis effect, they can account for things that are actually drifting, not drifting because of engines or whatever they claim, when the effect takes place from the ground. Now, most of the people listening are going to have lost me halfway through this description, and I'm detailing it with myself. I haven't got an opponent here. So you can imagine it's a complicated description. But if you can go to Wikipedia and just look at the GIF on the right with the two blue turning platforms, where it describes a ball seeming to curve as you watch it turning underneath it. Or I use a tree. You're on a roundabout looking at a tree. The tree seems to come towards you on the roundabout. Obviously, because it's a tree, it's rooted into the ground, not moving at all, and doesn't have to account for this effect. Yeah? Anyway, that's Coriolis. It's a long, convoluted shout-out to Carl Jobs and Looper for his excellent achievements in Doom speedrunning and learning how to play the game properly to beat all the people who even cheat. Not cheat, just find a way around a difficult part. Anyway, any questions on Coriolis? Otherwise, we'll move on to the next housekeeping questions. And thank you for bearing with me.
Yeah, Virus says in chat that you don't know what Coriolis is.
If I can just add something there, Nathan, what's really amazing is that when you see the cheat, how 100 people, once they know that there's a cheat, will only resort to doing that cheat, and that very few will actually try and explore like that Looper did to find another way to achieve the same end. But the way that the ballers also have this preconceived idea of tackling Coriolis, and they all just parrot that same, it's like using the cheat. It causes them damage. It might achieve a similar end, but it's not the right way like the Looper has figured out in that system.
Exactly. And he was the thing that's so beautiful about this story is he was doing it better than the cheaters. And I hate calling them cheaters. They're not cheating. Right? Doing what they were doing is not cheating. It's well within the parameters of the game. It's not cheating. I'm just saying the people who've figured out a workaround, the pit that they're doing it from isn't designed to be a pit for maneuvering up to the ledge. They've just figured a way of doing it. Good for them. It works within the game mechanics. It's not cheating, so therefore it's perfectly acceptable. But by the same token, Looper's quicker. So, that to me is just beautifully ironic. It's like, no, just doing it the way it's intended in terms of the actual mechanics and the way that the person who programmed it went, well, you've got to walk across the ledges. And if you fuck it up, you fall off and you've got to start again. Not if you fuck it up, you'll fall off, blast yourself from a corner onto the ledge that you're aiming for. So, I don't know. I just think it's beautiful. Big shout out to Looper. I respect that so much. Anyway.
Nathan, to your question.
What did Yannick say?
Now, Virus is saying in chat, since we're on Coriolis, Nathan is giving his own version of Coriolis. Now, Virus, come on the show right now. You've been on so many times on this subject, had your rear end handed to you all these times, and you're bragging in chat that we have our own version, or Nathan has his own version of Coriolis, when you're the one that can't make sense of it? Come on, right now.
Yeah, that's something they do when an argument defeats them. So they turn the argument into the man. So this isn't Coriolis arguments with me understanding it and detailing how their argument falls apart. It's Nathan's Coriolis effect. All right. Well, no. In reality, it's projection, because they invent their own Coriolis deviation, which is called Globiolis effect. That's how we've ascribed their detailed description of how actual deflection is negated. Well, that's not Coriolis effect, but they'll project that straight onto me. They do it with QE. Well, this is QE's scientific method. I'm sure he's absolutely flattered. It's not.
It's very annoying, though.
So is he saying you and your reference frames are ruined?
They all do it. Or nobody claims the horizon's Earth curve. Shout out to Amanda Young, who says, big shout out to Arwin. Gives him big hearts and 100.
Shout out retracted.
How dare you? You can't retract an Arwin shout out.
That's horrible. Shout out, Amanda.
Somebody get him off. Kick him out.
Good morning, guys.
Hey, Chocolate.
Morning, Chocolate.
Any evidence?
Good morning, Chocolate.
Go on, get them all out. Say hello. Hello.
Morning, Chocolate.
Yeah, hello. Good morning. Good morning,
Mr.
Chocolate.
Cool and popular.
Hello,
Everyone wants to
everybody.
say hello to him.
We don't need to have an episode of the Waltons when it's Chocolate joins. Come on.
It's like the Fonz, isn't
it's
he?
like Cheers, man.
I was going to say Fonzie. You like Fonzie? Hey, it's Fonzie.
I can't even get it in. Snacks moved in the front. Hey, Chocolate.
Needs to bang the jukebox.
Oh, he's gone. He'll be back.
Is he gone? We're telling him how great he is. Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
What is it, Owen says? It's the assumption of physicality bias.
Physical assumption. Oh, well, I won't take it away from you there, Armin. Physicality assumption bias. The assumption that Mars, for example, is a physical rock in a sky vacuum with enough atmosphere not dispersing into the vacuum for helicopters to work on it. You know, that kind of complete nonsense where you're assumed physical rock in the sky violating the second law of thermodynamics with its atmosphere not dispersing into a sky vacuum you've just travelled through to get there. Yeah, that kind of nonsense.
You just have to make the helicopter rotors go at the magic speed, and then there you go.
Do the gas particles that are not expanding into the vacuum also have a magic speed where they slow down, reach absolute zero, burn their briars in defiance of the second law of thermodynamics, and then fall back down to Mars, go down, go boom boom?
Yeah, there you go. You just described it.
Man, I'm doing better than a baller. Second law of thermodynamics doesn't apply to Mars, right, fundies? No, you've just got Owen's physical assumption bias. That had a load of CGI. Oh, how comforting. Any evidence you can have gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container to press upon?
No.
No.
I'm glad this question is still asked. It messes a lot of different type of globers. It messes
Yeah,
them up.
no.
Go on, whoever it was. Marilyn.
Why do you think that is, Sin Cleanser? Like, why do you think it messes with a lot of, heliocentrists?
Because it encompasses a lot of what physics dives into. Pressure, resistance, gases, different types of states of matter. All these things are encompassed in that question alone. It's a great question.
By the way, it's one that kids can understand. That's what woke up my 11-year-old niece. She was in the store and she was talking about space and talked about a balloon and a tire and gas pressure, and she instantly looked at me like, what does that mean? And now she's all into looking at space.com and going, look, it says might, maybe, and everything. This doesn't make sense. How do they know? And I go, there you go. How do they know? And that's where it starts. So gas pressure without a container is a very, very big conversation that needs to happen, especially with kids.
Yeah, it's called the
Very, very dynamic question.
Yeah.
Sorry, very dynamic.
I agree.
It's a wicked subject
It's
to talk about.
It's one of the mainstays, I think, of flat Earth.
Well, you just talking when you say that, it's like there's going to be a certain faction of people that go, it's disgusting. They're talking about this with kids. No, I talk about it with my kids. It's the second law of thermodynamics.
Exactly, Nathan. Exactly. I get that a lot. And how dare you, as a woman, you shouldn't have kids, and how, speak to kids like this. No, I'm just telling them the truth, reality. And if they want to get mad about that, real science, I don't know what to tell people in this world. But I also when you tell this to kids, you have to understand that they can't go to school answer these things. Come home and talk to mom or your aunt or whatever about the things that they teach you in school. Because if you stand up and say it in school, you're going to have problems. But if a parent tells this to their children and it says, come to me for other things, it shouldn't be a problem.
So you're bad for teaching a kid that you need a balloon in order to have a balloon, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. If it goes against their fundy belief, it's akin to 200 years ago, you're not being able to go against anything they described in terms of what they called the heavens. We're calling it the sky. They call it, heliocentrists call it space, a vacuum in violation of natural law. And therefore, if you go against that, even if it's using normal, understood laws of nature, then that's considered bad by people who are like, yeah, but if you teach them this law of nature in that context, it goes against my heliocentric belief. I don't care.
Exactly. I don't care.
When you send your children to public schools and it's an indoctrination center, and they come home and they don't even know basic math, English, history, but they are into all these social things. What are you supposed to do as a parent?
Well, you can have different sets of information too as a teenager or a child. You can still do a test. You can answer the questions. You just have other information in your brain as well. You can still do well in school.
You're missing my point. They're trying to program my children the way they want them to turn out. I want them to learn math, English, history.
They teach them math, English, history.
But they don't.
No.
I'd rather teach you that it rains
You
diamonds
missed what I
on
said.
Neptune or something.
I said, so, I didn't use the word, you teach them maths, English, history.
No, I did. I sent all my kids to private school, cost me a bundle each month. And we checked their homework. We talked to them. We took my kids. I had so much involvement with my kids. It's ridiculous.
My kids
That's
are
the main
homeschooled.
key.
I wouldn't say it's ridiculous. I think that's the way it should be.
Well said, Chocolate.
Instead of sending them to a building with people you don't know to teach them things you don't want them to teach you.
Yeah, so we started with private school. Then we did homeschooling the remainder of the majority until after high school.
You can't moan about the state teaching your kids stuff if you don't know what they're teaching you. And your job as a parent to look at that. And if you feel the need to correct it, correct it. And, you know, I think 99.9% of the population, the level of authority of the way a parent speaks, your child will listen, even if it's contradictory, because dad knows best or mum knows best, you know, and that opinion is much more valid if then explained, and it's an opportunity to go through the rhetoric with them. I've bored my kids with Gaspash, but they understand it now, both for the school and how it doesn't apply to the heliocentric model. I don't ask them to answer in relation to the heliocentric model in their school stuff. That's for them to know.
That's
for the big world.
That's kind of what
my sentiments exactly.
That's kind of what I was saying though. Like you could
My sentiments exactly there.
The teenager or the child could still know that heliocentrism is bollocks, but the child can still apply the information to pass the tests. You see, it's playing the game well so you succeed in life and you don't miss out because you've taken on some flat earth concept and then you miss out on all that society has to offer you. That's where the ball is criticizing this and calling it what they call it. That's the danger. Can you see that?
The danger's already happened though, and I'm looking at the children right now going to virtual school and everything else, and I have to have my best friend call me to say, hey, I need help with my kids because they're behind on the work and I don't understand any of this. I mean, when you got parents right now so indoctrinated and they're just so busy that they don't even understand the model, they don't understand science, they don't understand algebra, math, or any of this to even teach their kids, we have an issue. And this is why parents are not involved, because when they go to get involved, they can't do the work. They've dumbed down society so much now that parents cannot be parents. So they want to give up their children to these authorities because they think it's best, because they don't know. That's the issue. When we have adults that don't understand what's happening, you don't even understand algebra anymore, because guess what? They don't use it. Well, that's an issue, because you have to be able to help your kids go through this homework and everything. And if you can't, what's going on here?
Well, that's a societal problem that we could get into, but we're still on housekeeping. But the problem with people not caring enough about their kids is what you're describing, because even if we were in an ideal world and the education system provided precisely and nothing but the truth about the world as we understand it, and they could easily argue that's what they're doing now, by the way, then what would you have to do as a good parent anyway? Well, you'd have to obviously make sure they understood, assuming it's all correct, and correct them where they're wrong, educate them where they don't understand, etc., etc., etc. But the majority of people don't do that at all. They can't wait.
There was an incident with my lad, and I've
That's
always asked him.
if I may just, if I may.
not to toe the line as such, but to give the answers that are going to get you the marks. Now, hopefully I've taught him critical thinking, and I was exceptionally proud of his homework the other week, which he was asked to write about, and you can imagine the line they wanted him to take, which was to discuss the gender pay gap. And he Jordan Peterson the shit out of it. And I've never taught him about this. He's done this himself. And honestly, super pride. Yeah. Now that to me is his critical thinking. He's allowed to put that. He's allowed to address that with facts and that, because it's there. It's in the mainstream. It's discussable. But I wouldn't, and I'd have kicked his arse if he'd have answered a heliocentric question with the truth. I just want him to put that rhetoric, as Merle says, and get the points. But
Indeed,
he's demonstrated to me he's got the critical thinking that I wanted him to have, and he knows when to use it and when not to use it.
It's not to use it. It's the same as when you're being taught about in a religious education context, for the sake of argument, about an answer that requires you to contextualize it within the base of the education received within the religion that is being discussed or educated. Well, you would, by the same token, not teach a kid to say, well, you know, here's why I think the skeptic's view of Christianity stands in violation of the question that's specifically framed about how Christians describe it as being. Do you see what I mean? You wouldn't say to your kid, yeah, when you're in the religious education exam, detail how you think the question is phrased incorrectly because you have a totally different viewpoint. Because what they're teaching you is how that religion works. So they're obviously going to ask you to frame your answer around your understanding of how it works, not your views on how it doesn't work.
It's a bit like, I suppose it's a bit like doing English lit, getting to Shakespeare and going, no, it's all bollocks. It was written by Dr. John Dee or something. You know what I mean? He was fake. He never existed. Shakespeare, end of. Yeah, you're not going to get the marks, are you? Even though technically
it's exactly saying, well, while I appreciate the eloquence, I feel that iambic pentameter wasn't the right methodology of language to write in. You're like, well, that's not what you're being asked. You're being asked to describe in terms of your emotions towards the piece and your how you feel it might alienate an audience in modern times or whatever they're asking you. You know, and it's like, no, you've got to understand how the question's phrased. If it's being let's bring it back on topic. If it's being phrased within a framework of heliocentrism, you want your child to understand that that is how the question needs to be answered. Because it's a mark in terms of, yes, they're phrasing it within, you must understand this is actually your world, but providing your kid already understands that, well, given your critical thought, do you think that is your world? No. Well, you don't have to do that when it comes to RE, but you do have to do it when it comes to some of the things they call science. Well, yeah, so be it.
Yes.
Yeah, but at least with Shakespeare,
that's
you have
what
an option to be or not to be.
Well, that's what I did with my children. That's exactly what I did with my children. Can anybody hear me here today? That's what I did with my children. I explained to them that they have to learn the truth and the lies, understand both. Put the answer they gave you, the lie answer, on the question paper. When you hand your teacher that you don't believe what you wrote down on the answer paper, it was incorrect, even though you passed it.
Well, in doing so, it's very useful for the child as well.
That's what I said. And
people generally, if you think of how this particular lie, the heliocentric deception, if you think of how it's structured in society and how it manifests in terms of people's belief in it, that is very much akin to just general human behaviour. You know, there's the 95% truth, 5% little white lie that gets you by with a little bit more ease. You know, the truth and lie system, if you want to call it that, which the alternative conspiracy realm do describe, the general overall matrix style of government and all the other control structures we have around us, laws and bills and all the rest of it. Well, within that context, you think, how does a general Joe I meet on the street behave? Well, most of the time you can assume 95% of what they're saying is just, you know, plausible, non-lies. But occasionally, if there's something mixed in with their completely believed, non-rhetorical, non-preachy based information that they're giving you, when you can teach a kid that just within the language itself, some of the things will give you the impression that the world is a particular way. You know, just certain words. For example, atmosphere. When you're just talking about the air you're breathing. That is a part of a language that you could, if you wanted a hard time in life, challenge it every time someone used it in day-to-day life, but understand that when you're using that language, it's there for a reason. It's there because you're in a particular paradigm when we're contextualizing it in exams, and you need to actually portray that paradigm back to the examiner so that they understand that you understand it. You don't have to believe it, and it's better to critically think it and critically analyze it rather than just accepting it because you've been asked it in a certain way. In other words, the process of detailing this to a kid, even if it was RE, religious education, would still leave them at the end of the process thinking critically. And in the time that I spent in a private school, that was one of the things they taught me, and I had no idea that it was an exceptional or not taught in state schools. I didn't know that at the time. So critical thought, when JLB started talking about, like, yeah, obviously, everyone does that. No, they don't. And you don't realise that the reason is because there's a certain time in certain schooling, in certain societal, frameworks, where they will teach certain groups of people critical thought. Other people, the majority, they won't. With very good reason. They're preparing you to be a good worker in a state school. That's what it's for.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't already realise that, then tough luck. But if you've got a kid in a state school and you still want them to have that education to get by in general societal terms, which is advisable unless you want to put huge amounts of effort in yourself, like 10th Man has,
right.
Well, go on. Go on, whoever's interrupting.
Oh, sorry, honey. I didn't realize I was off the mic at that time.
That's
But
okay.
yeah, you're right. Absolutely.
The process in doing it, I'll get to the point because I'm obviously waffling quite a lot, is to get the kid to think critically. I was privy enough to get that taught to me explicitly. Most people don't. But if you can get them to analyse what they're being taught and assess whether or not it is or isn't correct by various different processes, defining words, whatever you want to go through, I'm not going to keep this waffle on forever, but that leaves the kid at the end critically thinking anyway.
I agree, but doesn't it make you mad sometimes that you literally are seeing the homework and they're telling these kids not critical thinking, they're telling you this is factual. The sun's 93 million miles away. We're spending 66,000 miles around the sun. All these different things that you hear sometimes with no actual proof of any of this stuff. Doesn't it just piss you off sometimes? Because
really.
It's not fair for them to be teaching facts they say it's not.
Not really. When I've just described how useful it can be to pull it apart critically, and the end result of that is that something that is punted as being absolutely factual can be analysed by you personally and assessed for its actual validity. And that process is useful to teach them critical thought. So you can get pissed off that they're teaching something that's not true, but if they went through life never being taught something that was incorrect and then analysing it critically, you'd never have the opportunity to do that. Now, I can appreciate that someone might say, well, that's just positive spin, but that's what life's all about.
Right. You are right on that. And because the world will spit you out, literally.
There seems to be a theme here, though, Nathan, like with your first example. It's really what I'm getting is it's not about shortcuts. It's really about doing the work. Like a lot of people are just lazy and they don't want to apply themselves. They don't want to put the a lot of people, they don't want to put the hard work in, practice it, refine their skills. Critical thinking is essential. It's an excellent point.
Yeah.
And bringing it back
Yeah, what
to
I
your
teach my children.
your first example about the ledges.
Go ahead.
It's like the way that we're taught the only way to climb that ledge is by blowing yourself up to achieve it. And everyone just goes through the motions of blowing themselves up to get to the ledge until someone figures out another way.
Yeah. Well, in the case of my children, their friend's base has increased because of the Gleason map in their rooms, because they've all been asking what this map is over the last 6 years. And I've been able to actually recently teach them about the black swan and how to calculate the maps of the Earth that they were taught, and to see that the geometric horizon should be this distance, but we're seeing these two things and the horizon beyond that. So does that mean the Earth is a flat level or is it a ball? Which one? After doing the maps now, you see what I mean? It's been, for me, it's been a great experience with the children to learn about the flat Earth and to teach their friends also. And they all want a map, and I gave them a map as well, laminated. It's been fantastic, and everything you've said, I concur with.
And this
Everyone.
is the thing. If you're listening in and you're a Glober, for instance, listen to the subcontext of what we're discussing here. We're all discussing how concerned we are for the quality of our kids' education. That's what we're actually discussing. Beyond the fact that we're talking about flat Earth in the subject matter, because that's what the show's about. So that's nothing but positive, isn't it? Everyone here wants the best for their kids and wants to talk and discuss about how they can go to extra efforts to achieve that. You know what I mean? So for me, it's like, this is, I hate to call it this, but in that particular aspect, a very positive community. You know, people are concerned about that, to the point where people like Anthony, who hasn't even got kids, will be like, I'm concerned for the education structure. It's like, why? Well, because he's concerned about future generations. Isn't that a positive thing? Especially when they're your own and you're actually demonstrating that, putting your money where your mouth is, putting the time and effort in yourself. It's like, well, those are the kind of people that, not for the majority, I can't speak for the majority of flat earthers, but certainly by the standards of the people that come here and talk to me, that's what it seems like, I'll use this word loosely, we are like. Would we all agree?
You were putting up. Oh, sorry.
No, you go.
I don't think you need to have
No,
children to be concerned about what children generally are being taught in school.
People don't care.
I was just going to say
But
that.
they make it.
I don't have kids,
they
but I'm
pin us-
concerned about the same thing because I remember when I was a kid and I was asking questions and I was shut down because the questions I asked wasn't on par with what we were supposed to be talking about. Right? I was told I just need to know that it's gravity because of the test and that I have to pass the test and that's it. I don't need to have kids to be concerned about that.
It's a bit like, you know, when Rumpus comes in and he gives the dirty little secret away right at the very, very beginning. You know, he'll make the concession or he'll make the dirty statement straight away, and then you have the conversation all within that paradigm. They do that in the classroom with the globe. When you're like 5, they show you the globe and they say, this is where you live, and this is how the oceans stick to it, and everyone says, how did they not fall off? And they tell you that dirty little secret then. It's only when you get to like 40 that you start reconsidering it, like I did, and I was like, hang on a minute. now here I am.
Go on, Stacey.
You know, but like that positive spin, I appreciate Nathan putting on it, because it almost makes you think differently now on the educational system, because I see the whole world and all the lies, and that why would they lie? We know why they lie. We've been lied to our whole lives. But if you don't go through that, right, and your parents will say, hey, look, this isn't true, you have to validate stuff, I don't know if I'd be awake to the point that I am. So I'm kind of happy that I went through that in a way to see that the BS was happening everywhere, right? And that I need to look into things more and critically think. So yeah, flat Earth kind of makes people go back and think about what they've been taught.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, the globe shuts down all critical thinking, and you just have to know that, and that's it, right? You're not. That's why so many Globers are so like it's almost like a psychopathic thing. Like they can't let it go because they weren't given that option when they were a kid. They weren't told, yeah, this is a good idea of what we think it is. They were given, it's definite. This is what it is. These are the numbers. This is what you have to know in order to pass the test. So they've taken away that mystery of exploration, that mystery of what could that be. They don't even give them that option. They're just saying, "Oh no, this is it. That's it."
If you want to hear
It's insane.
If you want to hear an origin story that describes the process of critical thought from a position where everything was accepted, listen to Jaron of Jaronism's origin of flat Earth story. So how he came to this subject and how he progressed through the subject initially is the story of critical thought from flat Earth realization. That is what Jaronism's story is.
I can say for me too, that's been my journey. I didn't realize that they call it the liberal arts, the trivium and the quadrivium. It's the essential key you need to progress as a human being. Without it, you're not critical.
Exactly. They don't teach the trivium in public schools, or what?
But what I wanted to add there was that they hold the straw man up that we're the ones trying to mislead the children. You know, and like you were saying, we're actually sitting here discussing what is the best way to instill critical thinking into the next generation so that they don't blindly follow just so stories, but they're always pinning us as the misleading false information.
But can I ask a question? Were you guys taught critical thinking though? I wasn't taught that in school. I wasn't taught that by my parents at a young age. But I remember being very young and going, "That don't right. That's not right." And I was always questioning. But I wasn't taught to critical think. It was in us. It's almost like it's been taken away from us. So that's my issue with it. Is at 7 years old, I was already thinking about things in a totally different perspective than I was being taught. So where does that come from? Is it taught to you or is it in you?
Yes, it was taught to me when I went to a private school, and then I later found out that it wasn't taught to anybody else in those years that I was being taught it at that private school, because I subsequently that school shut down, and I then went to a normal school, or whatever you would call it, state school, after that. And obviously you're not going to know that they haven't been taught what you've been taught. It was only later on in life that I found out, well, people aren't taught that in public schools. And then you look into what's a public school, what's it preparing people for? Well, it's preparing them to be an efficient worker. Well, you don't need critical thought for that.
That's right. That's absolutely correct. When you go to private school, you're possibly going to be controlling those below, the working staff, working class. So you're aspiring to be middle class or upper class when you go to private school. So you're going to be in a position of control, really. And when you go to state schools, you are going to be the working class. Basically, that's what I learned whilst I was growing up, right in the thick of it. I enjoyed it.
Costs nothing to teach a child critical thought. Zero. Nada. Doesn't cost you anything. That's why I'm putting that. Go on.
My father.
It's Jin. I was say I don't remember it being taught it specifically as a structured lesson, i.e. today we're doing. But I mean, I'm a bit older than you, Nathan. Mine was all state school. But I certainly remember it being taught in, first of all, applying scientific method and using that. But I remember learning a fair bit about applying reasoning and evaluating evidence in history when we were before we did any subjects, actually looking at sources and evaluating the source and giving that a ranking before you then. That may well have. I don't remember my kids being taught that now in terms of history. They're just given memorize these things. But I mean, I'd have been about 10, 11.
Indeed. Yeah, this is.
Yeah, you're right, Adam. You're right, Adam. I had the same training. We in history, we debated history and we also debated the politics because of war. War and politics go together. And we were doing the Second World War and the First World War. And we were asking whether the decisions made were good for mankind or not, etc., etc. That did help to switch on a little bit of critical thinking. Yes, I agree. I went to school from 1961, secondary school in the 70s. So in that period.
Yes, it's an aspect of critical thought. So yes, primary source research is what you're detailing, which yes, they did indeed teach, I'm sure, almost everybody in history. That's what history is, right? But they don't give it you in any massive amount. They're not explicitly telling you how to do it. They're taking you through the process, but they're taking you through it rather than teaching you how to do it. There's a distinct difference between teaching you specifically how to do primary source research and then taking you by the hand and doing it in a structured class that leads you to an exercise, an exam at the end.
The other end is.
I can honestly say. Sorry, Adam. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the other end is actually data. It's actually a big part of the pharmacist job is to, particularly with regards to data dissemination, gathering, and then giving that information out for clinical purposes. It is taught at the back end of the degree program in terms of critically evaluating to then make decisions. But it was noticeable that that's put in at the end. You've got to all the end of all your training, and that's when that sort of stuff's then re-put back in as you're then going to have to give out advice that, you know, lives matter on it. So it is reinserted.
Yeah. I had this experience in the army. So I was in the Army Cadets for 3 years and in the Territorial Army for 2 years, okay? And you do learn a little bit of critical thinking. And then I got an extra dose from my father. Where's your common sense? Where's your initiative? You know, helping you to think properly and do things methodically, and check everything. Yeah, you know, I was lucky in that sense that I had that extra. I only got a little bit at school, but I got a massive dollop in the military, to be quite honest, and it was very interesting indeed.
You gotta have critical thinking, right? You guys agree with that? You gotta have critical thinking. Hey, just wanted to leave it on a side note. Have you ever looked into flat Earth?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys said that about history. I hated, like, 8th grade, I think, was my pivotal point. I kind of remember looking back now, or sitting in class, and I hated history so much, and I thought it was a bunch of BS, and we were debating it and everything else and talking about wars and everything, and it made me look at authorities differently, right? What are you teaching me? I don't know. And I hated science back then too. It's like, oh, this is just so stupid. And then all of a sudden now that I've opened up my mind to what the world actually really is, right? And I have that proof. I look at science totally different. I love science. I'm going to go back to my science teacher and go, hey, I want to have a conversation. This is great. But it was 8th grade and history that did it for me to have that critical thinking, to literally say, you know what, forget this. I'm going to raise my hand up and I'm going to start asking questions. But then I started getting in trouble. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Detention and everything else, because they don't want you to ask those questions.
Yeah, we've got those stories here too. Exactly. You start actually expressing critical thought, analysing the subject matter that you're being taught, and they don't like it, they kick you out of the class.
Yep.
Indeed.
Don't dare think too much.
You don't think too much
until
about
you
this.
stop asking questions when you're an honor roll student. You're like, what?
Supposed
You
to
don't want me to-
listen.
you
You're supposed to
don't wanna talk
repeat.
about
That's
this?
it. Supposed to listen and repeat. That's what you're supposed to do. Supposed to comprehend it.
Sorry. The reason they fear flat Earth
Never
so much.
criticize your teacher. Never answer back, and don't be rude to your parents.
Never interrupt.
And respect your elders.
Go ahead, Tentuan.
About interrupting, yeah. The reason they fear flat Earth so much is they don't have you focused on when the bankers lie or the politicians lie or history rewritten and it lies, or medical profession, you find a quack doctor. They're okay with those kind of lies. But the minute you say flat Earth, you hit the biggest lie of all, because it changes the whole educational system. They can't teach evolution. They can't teach Big Bang. They can't teach that your life means nothing, that there's no accountability one day to God. They can't have you go there. That's why flat Earth is a dagger to all the lies.
I don't know if I agree with.
Okay, that's just what I feel.
Well, no, what I
I would agree with that. I would agree with that.
I would agree with that too,
Okay,
Tenth
let's
Man.
not run
once
the
you know
actual
about
discussion. We
flat
can all
Earth,
agree and
dude,
disagree.
you're not
Hold
really
on.
surprised anymore.
Hello?
You're really
Hello? Hello?
I hear you, Nathan.
Hello? There was an actual discussion? Go ahead, John. John?
Yeah, the whole idea that heliocentrism is intrinsically bad, you know, it's within the framework of materialism and naturalism. I think it actually holds society together better when people aren't believing in unicorns and magical things. Now, I don't necessarily think it, like, if tomorrow everyone found out the Earth was flat, I don't know if it would be a good thing.
Well, John, what you're saying is
Yeah,
exactly the
well-
description for heliocentrism, the magical things that don't exist. So you said it needs to be here so people don't believe in unicorns, but the whole heliocentric is a unicorn.
Well, whether it be a good thing
Thank
or a
you.
bad
And
thing,
we're
it
not
is
living
a
in
true
good
thing.
times now.
And sometimes
We are
you
not
just gotta
living
rip the
in good
Band-Aid
times
off
at
real
all.
hard and fast.
Jeez,
We're not
there's
living
two
in good
people
times.
talking. Jin, I will bring you in, but you've got to slip in at the right time. Go ahead, Chocolate, and then you, Jin.
Yeah, sorry about that.
It's okay.
Yeah.
No, you're
thanks.
good, Jen. I was just saying, to follow up on John, he said he doesn't necessarily think it'd be a good thing. And while I might agree, a lot of people lose their shit. Good thing or a bad thing, if it's the true thing, then I think in the end it'll be a good thing. because sometimes you just gotta rip the band-aid off real hard and fast, because slowing it down just doesn't work, and it just hurts more. That's my statement.
Go ahead, Jin.
Oh, sorry.
Then you, Melon.
Thanks.
Yes, sorry about my interruption earlier. Basically, I was just going to say this. Earth has been hijacked. Deception has been perpetuated across the flat Earth, and humanity is suffering. It's been enslaved, and that can never be a good thing. So if it's the truth, it must come out. That's it. That's all I'm on now. Sorry.
Mel.
And likewise, 10th man, I didn't mean to interrupt. I think you made a great point there about accountability. I think the more responsible people can be for themselves and aware that we inhabit Earth together, we share it, we're all here together. We might not always see eye to eye or get along, but when we can be accountable for ourselves and accept responsibility for ourselves and our actions, I don't think we have to worry about the creator then, I think there's an acceptance. It's just my
that's a good way of
thoughts.
putting it. Don't have to worry about it, and I think that's a lot of a problem, that's a problem for our opponents. In other words, their skeletons in their closet makes them worry about the creator when they're faced with it, because they've come to this subject, and inevitably that will either, deep down, they'll know that that's something they have to assess, and they don't like it, and they'd rather have the nihilism, they'd rather have the heliocentric model as their world. Chocolate and John, go ahead. Who wants to go first?
I was going to say that might be one way to take it, is that they try to deal
roboting
with it, or they could, load up a bunch of books and try to, fight their way out of whatever the prison they think they're in.
What, get to Mars?
Oh, sorry, is that better?
Yeah, it's fine. We heard 90% of it. Don't worry.
Yeah. No. I was saying one way they could take it is how you said, or there could be a large group of mentally ill people that decide that they're going to, fight their way out of this container now.
Are you implying, because we've got two different... Hold on. I've got two different views that I want to cover right now. I've got Chocolate and John. John saying that people might go nuts if they find out, because then they're going to try and fight their way out of the container or find the edge or whatever. Okay, well, that's a possibility, and certainly I've pondered on it myself. But then we've also got Chocolate saying that there's a controlled release. In other words, they're trying to suppress the truth, but the truth will out, and delaying it is just going to cause more problems. Well, those are two very... I mean, they're not paralleling views, but they're very different views in terms of your thoughts going forward. And I want to explore both. I was just going to focus on Chocolate saying, well, you think it's a controlled release then, Chocolate? But if you can hold on to that thought just for a second, John, and then we'll come back to that one. But Chocolate, you go first.
I don't know. Maybe it was loud behind me or something. I never said control release. All I said was basically that, like after John said, if everybody found out, it would be a bad thing, right? And like I said, I agree. I think a lot of people would lose their shit, but I also think that if it just happened like that and it was just blatantly put out there like that, well, if it's true, then that would be the good thing to do, whether people lose their shit or not, because it's true, right? And if we had if we didn't have this lie to grow up on all our life, it wouldn't have been so hard. But now, because so many of us have grown up with this lie, it's impossible to separate from it. And as far as the thing with the container, like I have a coworker who says that, like, the idea of being inside of a container, it's like crazy. And I'm like, well, it's obviously not very small, because you can get in an aircraft and fly around for like 20 hours and not hit anything. So why does that make you feel some type of way? And to her, it's just like the idea of being contained, it bothers her. So I can see a lot of people going that route. I'm done.
But everybody loses their shit, right? We all have problems that make us lose our shit in life. You lose a loved one or whatever's going on in your life, so we lose our shit. But when they're lying to you about your everything around your reality, what you're standing on, I want to know that truth. You know, the only thing you have in this world of freedom is in your mind. So would I want them to control my mind and what I believe and see around me? No. In fact, it makes it easier in your life when you're losing your shit with loved ones or anything else, and you have to go back to going, you know what? I have sympathy and empathy for people, and I can even give myself some leniency because this world is messed up. Society has got their minds all warped. So you know what? It's okay. And at the end of the day, I know what I'm standing on, and they cannot control my mind. So for me, yes, you might lose your shit a little bit, but don't we all? You'll get that, you'll embrace it, and then you'll go, okay, I'm fine again. But it makes you a stronger person, and it makes you awake. They can't control that, take that from you. So for me, yes, the whole world needs to know. And they might lose their shit a little bit, but then they'll gather that back again and they'll have their mind set where it's supposed to be. Looking, critical thinking, all that, finding the truth, because the truth will always set you free. Stand in it, own it every single day.
Perfect. With that, I'm going to say, if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. A huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, and all that good stuff. Also, below this video, there is a link to get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on either premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!
Exactly, Ken. Tell them.
Nathan, can you hear me, Nathan? I want to address on that controlled release situation and why that makes 100% sense.
Go ahead.
Okay, so controlled release, they're testing the waters to see how the general public would react to flat Earth. Now, if they release it all at once, it could be like the infrastructure could collapse. It could be some type of war, not physical, but it probably lasts about at least 6 months. The world would go nuts. They're just itching it out there little by little by little. So that makes sense.
I have no idea. I don't know.
But
it seems that way, yes.
Same.
Based on the last 5 years,
Yeah.
yes, it seems to be that way, yes.
But they're ushering in a kind of like technological prison on us. Are they not? Because we're in good times by anyone's standard, I have to say. What do you think?
Yeah.
Can't think of any reasonable excuse for gatekeeping, and it's patronising for us to think that other people who are stuck in this paradigm don't deserve the truth, and we shouldn't tell them because they might go mental or start banging on the edge of a dome. The truth should out, and whether the truth is always a good thing. Could bad things happen as the truth unveils? Yeah, but we need to. Bad things happen all the time. Divulging the truth for fear of bad things happening is nonsensical and gatekeeping to me.
You're missing it.
They've
They're
wanted to
pushing the
convince
aliens.
people. They've convinced people to lose their shit because their favorite football team lost the game. Baseball team.
Right.
Yeah, but smashing your TV's one thing, legging it to Antarctica and banging on the dome's another thing, right?
Get a Kleenex.
Yeah.
I don't think that's.
I don't think that'll happen.
Who's gonna do that?
I don't think that would
Nobody.
actually
That's the
happen
thing.
anyway.
Nobody's going to do it. Because most people go, well, it's really, really far. And when we get there, it'll be really cold and quite dangerous, won't it? Well, I don't know, you know.
Yeah.
I think it was started
this
at
is
the college
nonsense.
levels
Listen,
first
you're not
with
looking
school.
at the damage being done by the lie. Look at 95% of the world, the damage that's done by the lie. You're worried about sprinkling a little truth?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well said.
Yeah.
Trying to Humanity is in dire straits. We're in danger now. Danger. Wear your mask. Wear your 2 masks and go and get your jab. That's where we are now. We're in
Can
danger.
I get
Come on.
somebody's opinion on this? Because I've talked to my ex of 17 years about the shape of the earth. Okay. I used to get yelled at. You're psychotic, all these different things. But since I went to Texas, I'm a traveler, and I came back and spoke to him again. He's been doing a lot of research. Here's the issue I have with all this controlled release thing. When the kids have YouTube right at their fingertips and all these conspiracies, and they're into them, by the way, all the kids are talking about them right now. But then when you talk about this one, I've actually been told, hey, no. I think it's a lie on both sides. I don't agree either one. And I think we're on a bigger sphere. I mean, they think this massive sphere exists now, and they're trying to make up their own, illusion in their head of what reality is. How do you deal with someone like that who says, no, I just think everything's a
We've
lie?
dealt with them. We've seen every single one of those cognitive processings occur here on Flat Earth Debate over the years. Every single one. I don't think there'll be one that you could suggest that we would see in future that we haven't seen already. I don't think there's anything new under the sun. People saying, well, I want to justify the idea of a bigger sphere. We've heard that loads of times. Anthony did it himself. He processed the information that way himself.
What's your evidence for a bigger sphere?
That's a great one to let them have, because if we go back to where everything comes from R. Everything's derived from this Arvo. So all the mechanics, all the weights, all the sizes of everything in their model derived from R. So, okay, give them. Say, yeah, okay. But that means every bit of mathematics, every bit.
Love the black swan.
Exactly.
Yeah, the black swan's been
that
debunked.
Means that your model is wrong.
Could I throw something in there? If you don't mind, Nathan, everybody.
Yeah.
No, Brian, get out of here. Yeah, of course, man.
How dare you, Brian?
What's up, man?
Hey, here you are. I've been listening in. I wasn't able to join in. It's for me. It's very simple. They had to move technology on. They had to move on the world. They are in control of the world, right? Whoever they are, right? They're obviously people are controlling the world outside of and it's outside of our control. 50 years ago, they claimed to go to the moon. Now they know they can't pull that off a second time, so they have to gradually allow the truth out while getting control of the reaction to the truth. Let's just say a soft release of the truth, because they know the time is going to come when it's going to become very prevalent. They are not going back to the moon because they didn't go there in the first place. So the easiest thing for them to do is allow the world to learn the truth, but keep control of what they already have control of.
Brian,
Warrior.
Can I ask you a question, mate?
Hold on.
Hold on,
Adam.
Are these white knights that are really looking after us and they're doing all good for us? Because it just sounds like a gatekeeping operation that we've seen in many a Freeman movement, all these things. Don't worry. You've seen it recently with Trump and the Q movement. Don't do anything. Sit on your arse. There's good people who've got a plan for you all. Just stay lazy.
I'm not saying they're good people. I'm saying they're bad people. But I'm saying they have control. And the truth, if they can release the truth, give everyone the truth, but keep control, they'll do it. The best way for them to do that.
I agree with Brian. Hold on.
Yeah,
just
but
one
they're
sec.
sending
Hold on.
them
Hold
over
on.
Mars.
Yes, hold on, Brian. Yes, I totally agree with you. Not only that, I disagree with whoever it was earlier that was like, no, it's in danger. We're in danger, because we're under control. It's like, no. If you think about it and just flip that statement and say it almost verbatim, we're very much under control at the moment. People are under control. That's good, isn't it? People, the violent, crazy monkeys that they are, right? They're all very much under control at the moment. Well, that's good, isn't it? Well, it depends who's saying it.
What about
You can see I've triggered you there, Jin.
humanity?
Didn't get to the
all
end,
this,
but go ahead.
getting a jab and that. Sorry, what about all this humanity stuff where they're asking us to get a jab?
Breaking up, Jin.
Countries that are coming onto this space agency now. Sorry, am I?
Are you roboting?
Connection's awful.
Am I sounding any better now?
Not really.
No, which is worse because you can't hear me
Because he's
saying
in
no.
Japan.
I didn't mean to trigger
Yeah.
nobody.
Okay. Someone else go. I.
All right, Jen. We love you, Jen.
As far as you know.
Right.
Well, he's worried.
Hear
He's
that shit,
worried
Hudson.
about the jab. He talks
But
about it all the time.
what I was saying about the
Go on, John. Go for it.
what I was saying though is that like the controlled release idea, you know, or the idea of, you know, if it's let loose all at once, things could go destructive. I mean, it's still us doing it to ourselves. It's still people doing it to people, and it's because within us we want to deny truth. You know, there's just a part of us that wants to deny what is.
Not me. Fuck that. I like the really is level. I don't live in delusion like a lot of people do. So you can go somewhere with that nonsense.
It's got to the point where I've got ball earthers now trying to tell me that straight actually means curved and curved actually means straight.
That's
I'm trying to
delusion.
explain to them. Yeah, I'm trying to explain to them that straight can never be perceived as curved because the only way that you can do that is with using non-Euclidean geometry. But we don't live in a non-Euclidean world. We live in a Euclidean world where straight lines are straight lines.
Please, can
and
you
then
mute?
they argue then, well, straight lines are never technically straight because you can never get a perfectly straight line. It's always going to be like there's going to be little tiny minuscule movements to make it not straight. So it becomes absurd.
Imagine being that delusional.
I know.
How do you
I
function
actually
in the
blocked him
world
for
when
being
you're
so
that
stupid.
delusional? How do these
I
guys
blocked him
tie
for
their
being-
socks, tie their shoes in the morning? I don't even get it. What, like,
Chocolate, it's because
Straight.
they've taken common
Straight.
sense from
Straight is
people.
curved.
Literally.
Chocolate. They're tying their socks now.
Yeah.
Can't tie their
They're tying
shoes.
their damn socks, man.
Hold on, just guys, Jin and Merlin, please can you mute your mics? You're causing horrendous feedback, both of you. Thank you.
Me?
What happened?
What?
Don't worry.
No, I said that was classic Chocolate saying that the Globers are thinking they're tying their shoes, but they're really tying their socks.
Yeah, man. They got socks with laces. Oh my god, straight line is curved. Then why the hell they calling it straight?
Chocolate, how many times you at work, I've seen, and I know you talk to people at work and all that stuff in real life, which is beautiful, but how many times have you probably said when you walk around like, dang, man, you ain't got no common sense. Where's the common sense in the world? Everybody's been saying that for years, and people walk around like zombies. I mean, even when I had some conversations with people about the earth or society and what's going on, a lot of people have that those eyes, they don't care. They're glazed over because, yeah, they are so used to being what? Having everything at their fingertips. They want to be lazy. They want a microwave. They want these things. They want people to tell them what to do. They want to be controlled because they manage, basically, because they don't want to have to manage other people because they can't. That's the problem. We've got in a society now where we can't even manage people.
They've been convinced that it's an every man for himself world. That's why.
But then why is it that when certain men or certain women start to think for themselves, they get very upset about it? If it's an every man for themselves world. Why is it? Because I don't think the floor is a ball that's going somewhere and spinning around in a vacuum of nothingness. Why all of a sudden I'm crazy? When they experience the
it
world the
makes
same way
them
I
question their own
How do they
beliefs. That's why.
Smart people are usually called crazy.
Yeah.
They also don't like someone else telling them what the world is or telling them something like, oh, you are know-it-all. I get that a lot. You know what I mean? So it comes from a know-it-all perspective, and they're more intelligent than them, and you're kind of like battling them is what they feel like. But in reality, we're just trying to tell you the truth, but all of a sudden they're battling themselves, what they don't understand. But yeah,
they're battling
you're getting
their
to
own
them
senses.
with basic
I tell them all the
facts.
time, you're not battling me. Your senses are telling you exactly what I'm telling you.
But you know what
Your
you're trying to
senses
do?
have gotten you to this point in your life. So why would you not trust them? Why would you trust some guy's story in a book that you read a long time ago and that's just been passed down through the ages? Are you kidding me? Nah, man. Give yourself back your own authority to think.
Yeah, that's
But
what
not-
But look how heavily
that's
it's
the
been
thing, John,
real.
but you're trying to fight for that person to critically think, and you're trying to, you know, almost train them in doing it when they're trying to fight against it. You know, what Stacey's saying is the people want to be lazy. They don't want to have critical thought. They want to go back to not having to think about it. And when they come here, they've boarded into being perceived from their perspective, of course, forced into having to have critical thought, and they're bracing against it. Whereas you're saying, well, you're trying to convince that person to express their critical thought, and they don't want to. So it's like, in terms of how we were talking earlier about who does get taught and who doesn't get taught critical thought, imagine the scenario when you've got people who are, I don't know who said it, but somebody who said that's a group of people that are going to be in charge. Well, when you're teaching that group of people who are going to be in charge to critically think what they're being taught, and in this same scenario as us without critical thought, a presented piece of information like heliocentrism, who's to say that because they're already armed with the ability to critically think about it, they don't recognise some of the contradictions, but then realise that society is structured around that particular piece of deceit. So therefore, you don't have cognitive dissonance, you just have a tacit acceptance that society is under the impression of X, Y, and Z, when in reality, having assessed it with critical thought, you believe it to be some other way. But it's far less beneficial for you to start detailing that, because, well, how will it benefit you? You'll just end up in an argument. Whereas knowing it, you can give a wry smile when someone details it, because you personally have thought critically about it. Well, those are the people who are going to be in charge, because they're going to apply that to almost every other aspect of their life. And then they're going to spot the charlatans and the lies and the behaviour patterns of people, because they know that at a societal level, even paradigms that we think we exist in, once critically thought about, aren't necessarily how they are presented. And that's useful. Can't have everyone doing that, though, because then you can't keep them under control.
Even with
Then you'll even have some people start to understand that you even think that way. And then they'll start coming to you and say, well, what are your thoughts about this? Because I know they basically, I've had to put it just to be this way, right? I want to know what you think about this because you don't think like everybody else that I know. And I just looked at them like, is that? And they said, no, it's absolutely not an insult. It's because I understand that you think outside the box and you might look at this and see something that I don't see. And I was like, wow, okay.
I was going to say,
No
that's some
problem.
compliment.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
What does
Outside
the
incoherent box?
Exactly, QE. I was about to pick up on it. Exactly. Outside the box. Which box? Well, the box of the paradigm you're supposed to think within.
Exactly. I was blown away like, wow, okay. No problem. Awesome.
John.
Right.
QE.
Yes.
There's a gentleman that you need to put your eyes on. His name's I Can Science That. Bob Nodell's been bigging him up recently. He's done a video on scientific method that you're going to love.
Really?
Yeah,
link?
it's absolutely shocking. Yeah, I'll just type in I Can Science That on YouTube. You'll find him. It's his most recent upload.
Hasn't Rachel pulled him up on it yet?
She doesn't know scientific method, so she's not able to.
Oh, so
How do you know
Kiwi's
what
not
she
actually
knows?
gonna love
Hold
him.
on. What? This is the third time it's happened, so I don't mind bringing this up because it's now become a thing. What would Rachel do? I know what Rachel knows and how she'd approach this.
She's
What
the
the
one that's
fuck?
going back and forth with him. That's all.
I almost spit out my drink. What would Rachel
I've
do?
actually
What would
blocked him
Rachel
because
do?
I've actually blocked him because he's that dishonest. I just can't have a conversation with him. But I know John will have a field day with him because he just wants to demonstrate how strong his own arguments are relative to his rubbish arguments, and I'm sure he'll enjoy doing it. Whereas I just think I just can't be bothered talking to you. You're an idiot.
Just for clarity, there's no offence to Rachel on that score. Just you're talking for her and knowing what she knows and stuff. I'd be quite offended if I was there. That was my point.
I'm not talking for her.
Just told us what she knows and what she doesn't. Rachel doesn't know the scientific method, therefore she can't approach this subject. Right.
No,
That's
I can tell she doesn't know. I can tell she doesn't know. She gets led off into the reeds by people like Bob, who doesn't. She can't apply scientific method to work that bit out. So she's learning that bit, and I don't mind saying that because it's true. But I'm sure she won't be offended either. She knows that she doesn't know that yet. She's learning, but we can all spot it a mile away.
Fair enough.
Back to the initial conversation. The lifeguards are trained that when they go to rescue someone who's drowning, to wait until they don't put up a fight, or else they both might drown. So when you take that example of a flat earther trying to have a discussion with somebody who's heliocentric, and they put up a fight, just think of that analogy right there. There's no reason to. Just leave a couple of good housekeeping questions in their mind, like the top three, and walk away because they're not ready.
Walk away and tell them, I'll be here when you have that measurement of the radius or Earth curvature or your geometric horizon. I'll be right here.
That's right.
And the top three can be segmented into.
Well, that's the thing, though. Just because.
Go on. Go on. Go on, John,
I was just going to say, just because you recognize the Earth is flat does not mean you have the ability to critically think.
Indeed, absolutely. And when you're disseminating some of these arguments, the top three, you can pitch it based on how much or how little critical thinking you assess the person you're telling it to has got. You know, the easiest to comprehend is gas pressure without a container. The second easiest to comprehend is the black swan. And as strange as it is and contradictory to my Looper discussion earlier, the most convoluted, not because it's a complicated subject, Coriolis in and of itself is not that complicated, but the argument is. So that's the most complicated. So, you know, I would leave Coriolis to...
I hate to disagree with you, Nathan, but you go back a couple of hundred shows. I love Coriolis back then. If the Earth is turning, then it's turning under everything. Bullet, airplane, it doesn't matter.
I fundamentally agree with you.
I was sorry, Nathan.
I love arguing Coriolis, but I know the road I've took to get here. I know those tight roads.
But you're arguing with the liars and the trench guys. We're talking the public here.
Doesn't matter. Stacey spoke earlier about how somebody was, you know, had the audacity to assert that their belief would be that the Earth would be bigger. Well, that's an argument we've had to face here against the zealotry. Well, it doesn't mean that, you know, for every person that's a zealot that comes here and defends that position, there's another 100 people out there and, you know, next door to other people that are watching the show that would do it the same. They might not do it with the same dogged veracity. They might not do it with the same bitter taste in their mouth or hatred towards us as they're doing it. But ultimately, they've still got the same ideas. There's, like I say, there's nothing new under the sun in terms of how you can fight these positions cognitively. You can only process them in a certain amount of ways.
That's what I agree. There's nothing new under the sun. I agree with you there. So I would ask the question, if someone said they think the Earth is bigger, I said, what makes you think that?
Anyway.
I've asked that. I've asked it, and they say, oh, because I've been lied to, and I'm not going to be lied to by you guys either. I mean, I've been down the whole path, but I keep telling them, if you know that Narnia doesn't exist, what they gave you, says it's not real, then why would you go to what's a bigger sphere? Why would you go to there's still spaces where they say it exists? I don't understand how they can do it, especially when you understand gas pressure out of container and all these things. How can you go to a bigger sphere? Where is the validation for that? Don't you want that? No, they want to live in Narnia still.
Ask Anthony.
And that's the issue.
Hold on, we've got someone on the panel. We've got someone on the panel. Anthony, you there? Anthony, don't be shy. You know you pitched this to me 5 years ago. Come on, Anthony. He's buggered off.
It's called Sleeping Warrior for nothing.
Yes, sleeping. Anthony pitched this to me. He went out, he got some shots of, I think it was the Isle Man, you know, and came back to me and was like, it could just be a bigger ball. Look, based on these pictures.
And I remember him saying that even before I started coming on the show, and I was just like, nah, I can't do the bigger sphere thing because it's the sphere thing that's a problem, whether it's big or not.
Yep.
And if it is bigger, that still means the model's wrong. So what?
If the smaller one doesn't work, what makes you think the bigger one will?
It has to
because
be
of the lack of evidence of the small one.
It's just clear that because it's just clear this
A
nonsense.
bigger one would have less issues, less geometric horizon issues. There'd still be some.
That's
but
just one aspect.
No,
Hello. Can I clear this up? No, it has to be 39.59. to work with all the celestial observations, to work with the equator value derived from the movement of the sun. You can't have any other value. It has to be that value.
Exactly.
That's what you tell them, but
No,
I just find it funny because they're willing to accept that the model that they've been taught is wrong in order for you to be wrong, right? They'll accept that it's a bigger sphere with a bigger radius because you are telling them that it's not the radius that they've been given.
Yeah, but they can't, Chocolate.
No, I know they can't, but that's what they do.
Who's sharpening knives or starting a fire with a flint?
Neil,
That's why I'm off.
Neil, bloody hell,
I'm on mute.
Neil.
The one time I come off, I'm working all day. I'm trying
ruining
to speak,
everything.
and I say something.
God,
and he's
you're
talking
ruining
about,
it for
Somebody
everybody.
throw Neil in the bathroom.
Put him in the bathroom.
Put him in the bathroom.
Forget about it.
You're so Brooklyn, Neil. It's crazy.
I think
I'm
that
on mute.
Jupiter
Yeah,
has
we
still a
love you, Neil.
possibility if the Globers can basically give up on their outer space universe and just make it into a light spectacle, then they could sort of have their Jupiter-sized Earth.
Quick reminder, there's no live show tomorrow. My wife's birthday. Just in case anybody asks, because you're all here. If anybody asks, that's why.
Happy birthday.
Did you buy her?
Yay, in advance, happy birthday.
Yes,
Did you buy her another sound panel?
I don't buy her acoustic panels. You're joking, right? She's very tolerant of me buying them.
Trap.
Whose birthday is it?
No, they're not presents from my wife. She's very tolerant to let me have them, 10th.
Get her in the room.
Happy
so we can all
birthday!
say
Happy birthday! It is happy birthday.
I might put this out tomorrow so that this actually goes out on a birthday, and I'll tell her people are wishing you happy birthday on my show right now.
Cut her out a happy birthday.
I'm a woman. Do it, honey. I'm telling you, it's amazing to have other people, especially what you're doing. You love what you do, Nathan, and it's probably a little bit separate from your wife, but to have her involved in that manner and saying happy birthday, I think would be an amazing thing. So, yeah.
I think so too. Yeah. I would imagine that for someone like yourself, you have a wonderful woman to back you in everything that you do, and shout outs to her for even you mentioning it.
Oh, well, I'll
kind of
make
one
sure
of
she
those
reads the
unsolicited,
sentiment.
thankful points.
Yeah, I'll make sure she hears your well wishes. But with that, I am going to say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's after show possible. Of course, a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering Streams for hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, or joining as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!